Good morning. Coming at you again, the Keeping Receipts crew, Keeping Receipts tandem. It's Chris and I. We've got a couple of topics today that we want to dig into. How you doing today, Chris?
Pretty good, Doug. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks. We've got some extreme weather in our part of the world, though, and actually in various parts of the world today. I wanted to give a quick shout out to my uncle who is in Saipan right now,
Oh,
and
nice.
he's hunkered down because they are expecting, actually, they're in the midst of a serious typhoon that's about to hit land. So that whole island is hunkered down right now, and my uncle included. So wanted to send a quick shout out because he might be tuning in while they're inside during that storm. So
That's interesting. You mentioned that. My father-in-law, I spoke to him this morning in Newfoundland, -3 and snowing, so it could be worse. And my dad's in Beijing right now. Lucky him.
yeah,
And yeah, he says the rains are coming down hard. I guess it's typhoon season in that side of the world. So it could be worse. It's raining, but it could be worse, Doug.
yeah, exactly. And we got hit here last night. I know my kids were like a couple of puppy dogs because the thunder that was coming down, that was some booming thunder. Like I haven't heard thunder like that in quite some time. Well, maybe since last summer, but it's been a while,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to get things started today by addressing some comments. Actually, one comment, it was a slanderous comment that came in, but I thought it was funny. So
I
I
love
wanted to just raise it.
I love
And
the slanderous comments, Doug.
I know, I
I
know.
think it's good. Let's hear it.
So this one was kind of cool for a couple of reasons, but I believe it was directed at me, and it's an anonymous source. I couldn't detect a name. Not that I really did any digging anyway, but the person said, "Bald 60-year-old man child tries to make it on YouTube." Yes, that's me. Bald
60.
60.
Come on,
He
man.
gave me 60. He gave me 60.
Oh
He gave me
boy.
bald. I guess, I don't know. Maybe he was looking at my
No,
profile
no.
or something. I
Doug,
ain't
I
that.
think some people just go to vent and they feel pain and they want to distribute this pain evenly across other people. That's what the internet trolls do. So,
I know, but I was thinking constructively and actually for either an article title or a book title, even better, a book title.
yeah.
You won't walk by a title like that if you see that on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
Bald 60-year-old man child tries to make it on YouTube. I would pick that book up.
Yes.
100% I would pick that up.
Well, you should also remind this audience member that this is not YouTube specific. You have many different venues, and we're just trying to add our 2 cents to the forum. I think if people want to hear it, they can open their ears, and if not, they can move on. And doesn't really
Right.
change our perspective too much, right?
Right. It isn't YouTube specific. However, if you want to go over to YouTube and like and subscribe, that would help tremendously. But keep those coming, right? I mean, we want to try and minimize profanity. But,
Yes.
if these come in as they roll in and they're funny, that one was pretty creative. I'm going to bring that up
Yeah.
because that'll bounce right off me. But, there's really nothing we can do about like attempts at bullying, cyberbullying, other than to raise the comment, unpack it, talk about it a little bit. And that one, I wouldn't call it gold, but it was creative. It got the person out of their seat. They attacked the keyboard. They hit me with the comments. Nicely done. And we got a couple of comments to unpack today. Reminds me of like in high school, there was this one girl who was just like relentless with bullying, but the only reason she did that is because her brother was like 3 years older and he was like the toughest guy in the school. So she
Yeah.
knew that no one was really going to respond. So
Right.
um,
And
it,
that was her way of flirting, I guess, right?
it was exactly. And the way we would respond is we'd like try and kill her with kindness or cure her with kindness,
There
right?
you go.
So
Yeah.
she'd be the bully and we'd be kind. So, I mean, I can't really do anything with cyberbullying other than raise the comment, unpack it. But I'm serious. I'm going to use that title for an article and I'm not going to wait till I'm 60. I'm going to do it like today or tomorrow. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about, but interesting little segue. We wanted to look into the controversy surrounding NBA referee Scott Foster,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially since the Tim Donaghy situation, which has headline news for quite some time, right? I think I watched a 30 for 30 doc on ESPN about that, the Tim Donaghy story. Now, because of the Tim Donaghy story, is Scott Foster really being given a fair shake and presumption of innocence, right? The most notable red flag with Foster in particular seems to have been, I think anyway, the streak of losses from Chris Paul led teams. And
Right.
Chris Paul has certainly come out publicly a couple of times and, well, not really gone after Scott Foster, but he's named him. He's
Oh yeah.
certainly name dropped him several times, um,
Well,
essentially saying that his calls had negative implications on the outcome of the game, direct implications on the outcome of the game. So
right. We
now his
also
calls are abnormally high in terms of technicals, right? I understand that that's an issue as well. So maybe, Chris, you can give us, our viewers here at Keeping Receipts, a sense of when referee suspicions on point shaving, etc., came to the forefront. It's probably been a story that's been, as old as the NBA itself. But when did the Tim Donaghy story come to the forefront? Do you recall that, when that happened?
Yeah, I believe it was roughly around 2010 season. I think that came to light. I didn't do my research exactly onto the year the Tim Donaghy stuff dropped. I should know this off the top of my head, but yeah,
I didn't mean to
I
put you
think
on the spot date or anything.
that's right. I think the concern with Donaghy started in the 2010s, I believe, with a series between the LA Lakers and the Sacramento Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very suspicious series. One of the most controversial series in NBA history, actually, where Sacramento Kings were just really sort of getting the short end of the stick. I think towards the end of the series, a lot of the bookies were sort of making money knowing that Donaghy was sort of influencing that series. So the FBI ended up doing an investigation, and Donaghy, I believe he was convicted of a crime. I do believe he's in jail time. So Donaghy came out, and basically it was alleged that he was giving information to the mafia to help them with their betting. Now, Donaghy did write a book, and in his book, he did claim that he was able to give accurate betting information to the mafia just based on his relationships with other referees, and he knew that certain referees were really, really biased against certain players. Like, for instance, referee Crawford. It was known that all the referees knew that Crawford and Allen Iverson had a history where they really didn't like each other. So Donaghy would basically do stuff when he knew Crawford was going to be refereeing a Philadelphia game. He would basically let his insiders know that the Philadelphia did not have a good chance of winning that game based on knowing the referees, right? Another thing Donaghy alleges, which I find it to be very credible, people have this notion of dismissing Donaghy because he was a criminal. And so they assume that everything that comes out of his mouth afterwards is a fabrication or not to be credible. But he alleges that he could basically determine who the winner of a game would be based on the pre-meeting that the referees had with the NBA. The NBA would meet with the officials and talk about things that they wanted to see called more aggressively and things that they wanted to let go.
So and there would be a non-disclosure understanding the contents of that meeting, right? They would.
That's right. For instance, I think it was 2001 where Philadelphia made its way to the NBA Finals. In the semifinals, they played a Milwaukee Bucks team that was actually really good. Sam Cassell, Ray Allen.
I remember that team.
Glenn Robinson. So they were actually playing pretty well, and they looked like they had a chance to beat Philadelphia. But they really got the short end of the stick when it came to officiating in that series. And then one of the rumors is that the NBA, after the Bucks series, the NBA started telling the officials, okay, Allen Iverson is palming and carrying the ball a little bit. Let's start looking for that now. Whereas the emphasis was definitely not on his traveling during the Eastern semifinals against Milwaukee. So a lot of people were just thinking that the NBA does this to sort of handpick their matchups. Now, the one thing to be noted is if you look at certain years, there are some teams that avoid this issue with the referees just because it's not really a close series. I think in basketball, the games sort of need to be close to be impacted.
So, but now parlays can be impacted, right?
Yeah, I guess. And the thing with Scott Foster, let's go back to him. One thing that's not discussed is in the investigation, it was found that the only person that Donaghy called as much as his mafia connections was Scott Foster. I think he called Scott Foster over 160 times in the span of a couple of months.
Right.
And those phone calls were very, very lengthy, some of them. And the rest of the NBA officiating crew in its entirety, I think he called 7 times. So very, very unusual, Donaghy's connection to Foster. And, this is not discussed. This is not widely reported. I do feel just like in many other circles, I believe there's a little bit of NBA propaganda going on. And, I'll call these people out by name. You will never hear any of this from Kendrick Perkins or Brian Windhorst because these guys are connected. And the NBA has a history of, when reporters fly a little bit too close to the sun, the NBA commissioner will come and say, hey, I kind of don't like where you're going with your reporting, but I've got a nice clubhouse for you to sit in. If you want to be part of the club, you're going to report the things we want you to report. You're not going to report the things that we don't want. And then you get access to our exclusive little club.
Sure.
So that's why, this stuff is not widely reported, but it is out there if you want to look it up. So Scott Foster definitely has reasons to maybe raise an eyebrow at his credibility. Now, the one thing that needs to be noted this year that I found really interesting, I got the tip from you, Doug, that there was a rumor circulating around the internet that Scott Foster was ejected for a game that happened against the Boston. It was LA Lakers versus Boston Celtics on February 23rd, 2026. That is what was rumored to be on the internet. Now, of course, the league did not have an official announcement on this, which they don't do. Even if they suspend an official, I don't think they report it. So the rumor was that Scott Foster missed a bunch of goaltending calls in this Lakers-Boston game. Did a little bit of digging. I think it's very interesting to note that Scott Foster wasn't on the crew of this game. So very, very quickly debunked just to go to see who the officials were on this game. I can't remember from the top of my head, but if you look at the NBA report, if you look at highlights of the game, which I did, Scott Foster's not on the crew. So this is another case of the NBA, NBA rumor mill sort of leading us astray. It is sort of interesting to note that part of this suspension allegedly is that Scott Foster will not referee in any of the games of the 2026 playoffs.
Right.
So we are now sitting on the week of the play-in tournament. We still have not started an actual NBA playoff round as of yet, so we don't know if that is the case. But we were discussing in the pre-show discussion, Doug, about how whether or not this had kind of made the NBA a little bit less controversial in some of the calls. We follow closely on some of the games that are really controversial, some of the really controversial ref calls. And surprisingly enough, it's been pretty quiet in the NBA with the exception of a game that happened on March 25th between the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that game did include Scott Foster. And I did a little bit of research, Doug. I looked at the highlights, and that game was just atrocious. And, to go back a little bit to Scott Foster, the reputation that he has, one of the nicknames he has is the Extender. And the reason is he's known for extending series in the playoffs. Whenever there's a team on the verge of eliminating the other team, chances are the team that's fighting for their lives usually end up winning. So that's what gives Scott Foster the name of the Extender. Now, in this particular game, it happened again where Minnesota was up by more than 10, I think, late in the fourth.
Right.
And the Rockets made an incredible comeback to send the game to overtime, and it was fueled by some horrendous Scott Foster calls.
Technicals in particular?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there's one, I was watching earlier, there's an offensive foul on Julius Randle. And then they reviewed it and then they upgraded it to a flagrant where Randall's just following his defender and he runs into the screen setter.
Right.
And they call some kind of like, violation. It became a flagrant foul. And as someone who's been watching basketball for a long time, that call made no sense. It's noteworthy that last year, Julius Randle actually bloodied Scott Foster's face with an incidental kick. And it does seem like Scott Foster has some animosity towards the Timberwolves. I think he had an incident with Rudy Gobert as well. So that happened right before the end of regulation. And then in overtime, this is the call that everyone's talking about. There was an obvious foul by Alperen Şengün on Naz Reid on a moving screen, but they called it an offensive foul. And then upon review, when they did a coach's challenge, Minnesota, Scott Foster looked at it and he deemed that it was an offensive foul when Alperen Şengün was clearly moving. And then after he made the call, Naz Reid looked at him, and I think it was something to the exact effect of, "Hey, bro, he was moving," or something like that. And then Naz Reid gets ejected immediately afterwards. And Minnesota still ends up winning the game. One of the more notable social media events that happened is Julius Randle pointing at Scott Foster when the game's over and saying, "It didn't work, bro. It didn't work, bro." And they caught that on camera, and social media kind of had fun with that. But just to sort of wrap it up, there's a reason why when you look at polls from fans and players and everyone alike, Scott Foster is consistently at the top of the list of the worst referees in the NBA. Nobody wants to watch an important game that their team is playing reffed by Scott Foster. I'm not sure why the league puts him in these high-profile situations. If he were to get suspended by the league, would not surprise me.
His previous relationship with Donaghy definitely raises red flags. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. It adds to the sort of credibility issues that he might have, aside from the horrendous games that he's had over his career. One last thing I want to say, as a basketball fan, whether I'm watching my kid play basketball or NBA or WNBA, I don't want to notice the refs. I want to see a game where I didn't think about the refs at all.
They should be invisible. Absolutely.
Right. Well, and I just very quickly, Doug, I made a list of the top 5 NBA's referees in the NBA this year. And just to quickly run down, I'm going to tell you the referee that I'd most like to see refereeing my team in an important game is Bill Kennedy. Now, Bill Kennedy went down with an ACL tear this year, unfortunately. But before then, he was really, really making the YouTube reels, and he was just such a big part of the game. But for his coaches' review calls, for his ability to chat with players and sort of mediate and bring the teams together and be a real arbiter, a real mediator of the game, as opposed to trying to be one of the stars of the game. So very quickly, our top 5 referees of the NBA this year, because I think it deserves mentioning, is Bill Kennedy's number 1, Zach Zarba at number 2. He's done a great job, and again, I think most fans feel comfortable when they see him reffing. We've got James Williams at number 3, another amazing ref. I think he's been reffing in the NBA of over 20 years, and people rarely even know his name just because that's the job he's doing. He's in the background mediating, running a good game. Also, some of his sarcastic faces that he makes when he's doing the coach's review, I suggest everyone go look that up because that's pretty entertaining.
It is.
And then number 4, we have Sean Corbin. Again, I think he's over 30 years reffing in the league. He's been doing a tremendous job, and I think he's one of the NBA's lead officials. And then at number 5, I've got Josh Tiven. That again, he doesn't make any highlights, which is a good thing. And I won't go through my list of the worst, but yeah, Scott Foster is up there. And let's see how much longer the NBA wants to put him in those big game situations.
Yeah, it's interesting as these parlay bet opportunities continue to fill, the bet tickets more and more. It's these minor details, especially during the regular season, that could easily be altered if these guys wanted to do that, or if there was a plan to do that, right? These parlays could easily be influenced. I know that guy, Michael Francis, the mobster who's on YouTube quite frequently. He talks about how easily approachable some of these officials were and some of these players were back in the day. I mean, that was going back into the 80s and stuff. But I can't imagine that culture is gone now that betting has become legalized, right? You would think that the underworld still has the ability to influence professional sports. They always have, and they probably always will.
Well, just to add on that, Doug, I don't even think it's the underworld anymore, because now we've got it legalized with Kalshi and poly markets.
That's true.
I don't bet personally, just to let everyone out there know. I don't find it enriches my life at all. I don't enjoy it.
I do. I'll play the parlay sometimes. NFL is. I'll make an NFL Sunday interesting with a $5 or $10 bet.
Right. No, I get all the enjoyment I need just from watching the activity. But I do feel like maybe it's something that, in keeping receipts, we should start doing in the future, is maybe studying what's happening with Kalshi. And my guess is that if you did do a deep dive, you would start to notice some patterns. And whether it's nefarious or not, I bet there's even fans out there that understand these patterns themselves, and they can look it up. It's on the pool report. You can look up on the NBA who's officiating these games. And I'm guessing there's some bettors out there that are savvy enough that they're using that information to help increase their odds to
no doubt. Yeah, there's patterns that can definitely be realized for sure. With officiating crews, with certain lineups. Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. Yeah.
All
so
right.
on that topic of officiating, wanted to sort of get your take. I haven't been following too closely, but I got to tell you, when this ABS system was coming in for MLB, I thought it was going to eliminate all of our potential issues we had with managers getting mad and tossed. But apparently that's not the case from what I've been seeing. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's pretty interesting.
That really hasn't been the case. I just put out a piece on Anubis Sports. Now, I thought that too, heading into the season, that conventional wisdom would kind of be lost, like the old school manager that chirps from the dugout about balls and strikes. That would be a thing of the past, and as a result, managers wouldn't be tossed anymore. We've got the challenge system plus the ABS that is now in full effect, but now managers are still getting tossed. Like the first week of the season, Derek Shelton from the Twins got tossed late in the game. Now the Twins lost that game 8-6. So he was talking about the timing of the ABS challenge. So there's these minute arguments now that I don't think they saw coming. The batter or the pitcher rather, has 2 or 3 seconds. I think they have 2 seconds to initiate the challenge and no more than 3 seconds. And in that particular instance with Twins manager Derek Shelton, he thought that the closer, Ryan Helsley, took too long to initiate the challenge. Now, what's too long? It might have been 4 seconds instead of 2, right? But we're not talking like 15, 20 seconds. It was like, maybe a microsecond that he took to initiate the challenge.
Okay.
And that was on a strike call.
I have a question as a layman. I'm kind of curious. Looking into the dugout, apparently this is part of the reason why there's this time limit of how much you have, because apparently you're not supposed to use assistance from the dugout.
Yeah, it's supposed
to make this assessment.
Yeah, it needs to be totally independent. So the batter initiates the challenge, or the pitcher initiates the challenge. Now, any other challenge that's out on the field, like an out or a safe call at any base, or if a runner tags early, something to that effect, that's always initiated from the dugout. You'll see the manager kind of do this on the telecast, and that initiates the challenge. Yeah. I don't know of any time limit on that in terms of initiating the challenge, but the batter or the pitcher, when they initiate the challenge independently, apparently there's a time limit, and I didn't know that heading into the season. And it's sort of loosely enforced. Is it 2 seconds? Is it 3 seconds? Is it 4 seconds? Now, in this particular case where Helsley challenged, the call was initially a ball, and it was on a 3-2 count, I think like in the 8th inning. And there were implications. It was late in the game, and Baltimore was ahead 8-6, right? So it was a ball and a 3-2 count. So it ended up being a walk. He challenged it, and then it was reversed. So in turn, it became a strikeout, right? So Baltimore won the challenge, and it was marginal. We're talking like a fraction of an inch. So you could tell that the manager, Derek Shelton, was frustrated that the call didn't go his way. But he didn't argue that. He argued about the timing of the call. Now, like I said, it might have been 4 seconds, 5 seconds max that Helsley took to initiate that call. Is that worth going ballistic over? I don't think so. But Shelton came out of the dugout. He was irate, got right in the umpire's face, and in turn, he got tossed, right? And then in another example, there was Blue Jays manager, John Schneider, who got tossed on a balk call by pitcher Kevin Gausman. Now, Gausman typically does a toe tap from the stretch before his delivery, right? And a pitcher, before he delivers, is supposed to come set. Like you have to stop, come set, and then pitch. Now, in this particular case, he tapped his front toe, I think 2 or 3 times, and then pitched. And he was like in the motion of still tapping when he delivered his pitch. It was a balk. I mean, you could look at it through the replay. It was definitely a balk. And Schneider came storming out of the dugout and got right in his face. Actually, John Boy on Twitter did a really funny reenactment of that, where he reads the lips of John Schneider in slow motion.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
It was a profanity-laced tirade. He got right in his face, mostly after he got ejected. He got in his face after he got ejected. But the cinematic effect, the clash between the manager and especially the home plate umpire, that is not lost on the game. In fact, I would say it's increased. You know, than what's been the case to start the season in previous years, from what I've seen anyway.
Right.
And then this past weekend, there was another argument. Kurt Suzuki, the Anaheim Angels, was arguing a base running call where Logan O'Hoppe, he struck out, but then the catcher mishandled the ball. Tyler Stevenson of the Reds mishandled the pitch, and O'Hoppe ran to first and just ran off the baseline, and then ended up being safe at first, but then the call was overturned. They said that he ran off the baseline. He was off the baseline. He clearly was. If you look at the replay, no question, he ran off the baseline, so it was a fair call. But Kurt Suzuki ran out of the dugout and same thing, just absolutely went ballistic and got tossed as well. Now, the common denominator with those 3 examples, with Derek Shelton, John Schneider, and Kurt Suzuki, was that their team was losing, right, in all 3 of those cases. So what does this tell you, or what does this tell us here at Keeping Receipts? It tells us that managers are still going to get tossed, but the reasoning behind it is they just want to fire up their team. They just want to get their team going, in the later innings. In the Jays case, they had lost, I think, 5 in a row heading into that game with the Dodgers. So at that point, the manager's got to get tossed, it seems, to fire up their team. It's going to happen. It's going to happen over something very minor, over a call that probably they have no business arguing in the first place. But there's still going to be that cinematic effect that we've seen in generations past.
Right.
Baseball purists and those in favor of, the fabric of the game, the traditional fabric of the game, are probably happy with that. I know I am, because I thought the introduction of ABS and the challenge system was going to mean that we're not going to see that animated clash at home plate anymore between the manager and the umpire. but I'm
Well,
happy to report that it's still there, and it's not going to go anytime soon.
well, it sounds like two of the three plays you mentioned were not ABS plays, right? They were
Well,
they were
that's
not
right.
regarded.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Only one of them was directly related to ABS, but it
right,
wasn't related to the call, ball or strike. It
right,
was only related to the timing of the call
right.
when the
I think
call was
you
initiated. Now,
I
that,
think
go
you
ahead.
nailed it by saying like there's several reasons a coach will put themselves in that situation. I think sometimes a coach is just really like in disbelief at how bad a call is, and that
Mhm.
adds to a frustration. And then through that interaction, maybe they step over a line, and the referee has to eject them. Which I think were the calls we were expecting to sort of go away more with this ABS challenge, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like in the case of this eighth inning 3-2 count where the ball is either a strike or a ball. This is part of the reason why me as a casual fan, why I love this ABS system so much, because I think that is such an important part of the game. And that's such an important detail, whether that's a fourth ball or whether that's a third strike, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
see in that case, the manager is just really annoyed at how marginal it didn't go his way. And so, but in that case, you kind of have to say to the manager, look, the computer's not lying, and it seems like you're just kind of being a sore loser because you think the guy tapped his head like 1 second after, right?
Mhm.
But I think it's pretty obvious in the case of the other two that it is, like you said, it sounds pretty obvious to me that it's just managers making that calculation, like, you know what, it's time to get my ass out of here to sort of motivate this clubhouse.
They
And
have
it's
to do
good that that's
something.
being good,
Well,
yeah.
I know in the Jays case, as a Jays fan, I mean, they had a dismal effort against the two worst teams in MLB. They were given a gift in terms of scheduling with a home series against the Colorado Rockies, and then immediately after that, a series against the Chicago White Sox, the two worst teams in MLB over the last two seasons.
Hmm.
And they went 1-5 against those two teams.
Right.
So tempers were flaring before that game. Tempers were probably flaring during the game, and it really didn't take anything much to get John Schneider out of that dugout. And it ended up being the balk call, which, like I said, was in fact the balk. The home plate umpire got the call correct. But yeah, he needed to rally the team somehow. And it seems like getting tossed is the way to do it, or
Yep.
traditionally that's been the way to do it. Did it work? No, it did not work in that game. However, the following day, the Jays finally snapped the losing streak and got a win against the Dodgers.
Right. Yeah, which is kind of, I think the baseball purists are happy in that sense. They didn't want to see too much of that going away. Uh,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
100%. You want that cinematic effect. That is part of the fabric, the dust kicking.
oh,
I remember
absolutely.
growing up seeing like Earl Weaver kicking dust,
Oh my
little
goodness.
little Earl Weaver who
For
was
me,
like
bef-
5'5", looking up at the umpire and kicking dust all over him was hilarious,
you
right?
know,
I mean,
before I knew anything about baseball, Doug, I knew about Tommy Lasorda.
yeah, oh
And
yeah, for sure.
I knew about how he would just give it and have his head all shaking all time. You know what I mean? So for me, that is one of the best parts of baseball. I can't remember which umpire it was that crawled around like a dog barking at the home plate. And then another one, I think he stole home plate and walked away with it. Right? These are some
Yeah,
of
I
my
think
favorite baseball.
Lou Pinella went absolutely ballistic a few times.
Yeah,
And then there's player reactions. I remember Milton Bradley
yeah,
completely destroyed the dugout, threw every
yeah,
object that he could
yeah,
find in the dugout
yeah.
onto the field. Uh, so are we going to see those types of tirades again? I don't think so. Probably not to that extent because uh, the games with, or sorry, the calls with huge implications, they're probably going to get them right.
Hmm.
The balls
Right.
and strikes calls. Well, I mean, case in point in the World Series last year,
Hmm.
which was the closest World Series of recent memory.
Hmm.
The Blue Jays, that call at the plate with IKF sliding in when he didn't take that secondary lead at third base,
Hmm.
and then he slid in, and we're talking like centimeters
Yeah. Yeah.
between being called out and called safe. He was called out.
Hmm.
If he was called safe, he would have won. The Jays would have won the World Series,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
That
imagine
close.
if they had have got that call wrong
Right.
and the Blue Jays won the World Series, that home plate umpire would be living in infamy,
Right.
right?
Now,
So the challenge system definitely has purpose. The game is better for it, but it's just so interesting to see these micro details that can be raised and can still boil over into a heated confrontation between the manager and the home plate umpire.
right. I wanted to ask you, Doug, what are the repercussions to these referees if they have a really bad game? I mean, now it's very obvious. I think there was one referee that missed like over 10 calls earlier this season. I think it was a Red Sox game. And then the following day, that referee made another horrible call at first base. And then I'm thinking of a player, I don't even know if he's reffing the league. It shows my knowledge of MLB referees. But, I know a couple of years ago watching Angel Hernandez, if he was behind home plate for a Jays game, you didn't even want to watch.
Yeah, well, Angel Hernandez, he still gets the playoffs, right? He still gets the playoffs sometimes. Really nothing that I can report. There's no repercussion or due process if an umpire has a poor performance appraisal. I'm not even sure what the appraisal entails, or if that information is available publicly. I'm not sure.
Well, don't we have it now with overturned calls? Like, for instance, this record of this one umpire getting consistently overturned on the ABS challenge.
Well, that's not difficult to tally. Yeah, you can tally that just at home, right? If you with a pencil and paper. For sure. I mean, that information is going to become more and more evident as the season progresses, and some umpires are already showing terrible inconsistency, right? Where their calls are being overturned each and every game, multiple times a game. So they are being exposed. Does that really? I don't know what the repercussions. I don't know what they do with that data, though. I think that's yet to be determined. They have to do something, I would think, right? But that's another thing. Another point that managers are arguing about is if calls get overturned multiple times a game, they're going to start chirping from the dugout. There was one example where Aaron Boone was definitely chirping the home plate umpire as call after call was getting overturned. Now, at least they're getting the call right. What's the issue here? Is there really an issue? Is there a need to show up the umpire? I don't know. That's a debate. That's something to think about.
Again, as someone who's a little bit more of a casual fan, the thing that bothered me most about baseball, the thing that bothers me, I guess it's going a little bit away now with the ABS, is watching one pitcher paint the outside and the umpire just thinks they're balls. And then on the next inning, that same pitcher will hit that same spot and that umpire calls it a strike. To me, as a casual fan, it seems like there's so much importance on that. And if inches are getting called in one direction in one inning and then not in the other inning, I just feel like it has such a major impact and it has such a weight, but it's a subtle weight that maybe the viewer doesn't really notice.
And some starting pitchers have spoken out about that. I know Walker Buehler. Some pitchers don't like it so far, right? I mean,
they don't like the ABS system.
No, they don't like the. I mean, a lot of pitchers have spoken out about it, against it already. I mean, it's technology, right? There's going to be flaws. Is it 100% accurate? And like you spoke of, some pitchers would get the outside perimeter, or they'd get 3-4 inches on the inside. That would be called a strike. I know Greg Maddux would get at least a couple of inches around the perimeter of the zone. He lived on the perimeter.
Right. So a guy like Greg Maddux would have really suffered from this system, my guess is.
I would think so. But then the argument is, a tenured pitcher builds that rapport with umpires and they build that respect. The argument is they deserve the benefit of the doubt on those marginal calls.
As a casual fan, I hate that. As an NBA
I don't like that
fan,
either. I think that's too old school.
As an NBA fan, I hate the fact that what's a foul for LeBron James and James Harden is not a foul for a first-year rookie. I absolutely hate that.
Yeah, but you and I both know that professional sports for generations operated that way.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And I think
borderline Hall of Famer would always be given the benefit of the doubt on a marginal call.
And I think your example of Greg Maddux is a good one. Because that is the case.
Yeah, he's not the only one, but I mean, MLB pitchers need the perimeter of the zone. They absolutely need it, unless you're throwing like 100 miles an hour, north of 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But even in that case, if you're throwing right down the pipe, most MLB hitters can pull a bullet. Doesn't matter
Right.
how hard you throw,
Right.
you still got to dot the outside perimeter of the zone.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see pitchers' ERA and
Mhm.
stats like walks, hits per innings pitched, the whip
Yeah.
stat. I love that stat. I think it's a great one to illustrate pitcher efficacy and how well controlled they are.
Mhm.
So we'll see how those stats pan out at the end of the year with the ABS system fully in place now.
I think Walker Bueller's concern about the accuracy, to me, that one seems a little bit, a little bit ridiculous, because as someone who's been watching tennis since I was a kid, how long have they been able to tell you exactly where that tennis ball hits the court? And
That's
the
right.
referees are using that, and that is Bible. That system is absolutely perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems easier to me in baseball with the strike zone.
Yeah, it probably or similar. It would be
Yeah.
similar enforcement, but I wonder
Right.
if any tennis purists kind of miss the John McEnroe tirades, right, of
Yeah.
past. I loved watching that as a casual fringe tennis fan.
Right.
That was pretty interesting to watch. But tennis players, they'll find other things to argue about, right?
Yeah.
They
Well,
absolutely will.
I kind of like that as a fan, we get to see who's right. McEnroe was
Yeah,
so heated at the refs. That was not there. That was somewhere else. And now we get to see who's actually accurate and telling the truth,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah,
so now when I'm watching a game with Angel Hernandez, I don't have to feel sick to my stomach. I can say, hey, they have the ability to take that power out of his hands and get the technology to tell us exactly where that ball landed.
yeah.
Because
But then what really is the purpose of the umpire, right? And
right,
we still have, what is it? It's a 4-man crew.
right.
Is it a 4-man crew or a 5-man
Right.
crew? I can't quite recall. It might even be a 5-man crew. Do we need that level of personnel on the field? I mean, you could argue that throughout MLB. I remember on opening day, my buddy telling me that there were 4 groundskeepers holding a hose, the end of a hose, to spray the pitcher's mound prior to the game, right? I mean, as AI is sweeping in and technology is sweeping into certain facets of the game, we're still holding on to HR and human power, right? And
Right.
personnel.
Right.
But do we need 5 umpires? Do we need 4 umpires? What
Well,
really are they doing at this point?
I was going to
Still
tell you,
calling- Go ahead.
I think when I first heard of this ABS, I thought they were going to do away with the umpire calling balls and strikes altogether. And I
Well, it
thought,
might be phased out 10 years from now. It might be just
well,
redundant. It might be a thing of
well,
the past.
I got to tell you that this system I didn't know. I wasn't well informed as to how it would run out, but when I'm watching it, I love it because I think it was Salvador Perez had one where I think he got 9 calls in a row, and they were all so marginal. And
Mhm.
he knew when to challenge and when not to, and he's just so on the ball. I think we've seen Alejandro Kirk do the same thing, and to me, that's just so impressive, and that's part of it, that the players have to decide when to use the challenges.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes me admire these players even more when the pitchers and the catchers know, no, you know what, that by a quarter of an inch, it touched the zone, So
Yeah, it is interesting, but there's been a few examples. I mean, I cited one here of Alejandro Kirk, who's one of the better catchers in MLB, and he challenged a strike that was clearly in the zone, right? Like got a large chunk of the zone. So yeah, it's a lot of autonomy with initiating these ABS challenges,
yes,
really, right? So they do have to have an outstanding sense of the zone and
right.
Be 100% certain that that's the right time and place to be using these ABS challenges.
Right. I think it adds to the aura of a player. And I can't wait for a playoff pitcher to just start telling the ref, "No, you're wrong," and I think that'll add to the lore of a game if we see a pitcher or a catcher that's just so pinpoint and so on.
It
Um,
will. And
yeah,
I'm sure soon enough, or if they're not doing it already, we will start tallying player stats in terms of successful ABS challenges.
Absolutely. And then we will know who is the most in tune with the game, which
Mhm.
I think is a very interesting stat. It's kind of hard to quantify.
It
But
is. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I guess there's probably not a parallel, but I did raise this. The Jays are off to a dismal start, and the success rate of their ABS challenges was somewhere in the 30% range,
ooh,
right?
that's
So
that's kind of bad, isn't it?
it is. It makes you think, well, if a team's challenges aren't successful, you know, they probably need to review that. And are the successful teams having more success? Are the winning teams having more success with their ABS challenges? I haven't
Mhm.
looked at that in depth, but that'd be interesting to research as well.
Yeah, good to know. Yeah, that would be good to look into. Maybe for another episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
All right, good chat. We definitely covered the content that we wanted to today.
Hmm.
And any closing remarks, Mr. Gotti? His
Yeah,
name's
I
not.
got a couple. Your last couple articles were pretty good. Tell the people at home what the last couple ones were and where they can find more of your work.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so like I said before, the Anubis one, that is all about managers still getting tossed. So it expands further on what Chris and I were talking about today. And the article on the Slam Scarborough is kind of digs into helicopter parenting in sports, which Chris and I are both parents. And we try to be as hands off as possible with our kids and their choices in sports. But sometimes you just have to intervene, right? But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But at any rate, there's an article that delves into that, and that is located on Substack at the Slam Scarborough.
Right on. I got one more comment, Doug. As you
Yeah.
said earlier, for the haters, drop those comments. Whatever you got to say. If it is going to make your day better to drop some hate, we've got broad shoulders over here. So
Yeah.
positive,
Yeah. I
negative,
don't,
drop those comments.
I
To the
don't, I
negative,
don't,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Do it. I don't really hate anything except maybe butter and onions, and especially in that combination, that's about it.
wow. Wow, you must be one of the only. That's where we're very different, Doug. We're very common in
Yeah.
our things, but I love butter and onions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Give me mushrooms all day, but no
Oh,
onions.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. We're different people on that sense, Doug. But anyways, yeah. All
All
right.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye for now.
Take
Till
care.
next time.